So our panel is on the multiplier effect of entrepreneurs. We've always said at Endeavor that in addition to building high-scale, high-impact companies, that entrepreneurs pay it forward, Endeavor entrepreneurs pay it forward into the ecosystem through mentoring, through inspiration, through investment. And many of you have seen these incredible bubble maps, as we call them, done by the Endeavor Insight team, which actually maps out how entrepreneurs are actually influencing an ecosystem. And the bigger your bubble, the more influence you've had. So we are a place where it is very good to be a big bubble. And our goal actually is to do these maps in every Endeavor country and every Endeavor affiliate in the next 5 years. And so we have 3 big bubbles joining us today. And I'm going to start, with you, Guibert. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to ask each of them a set of questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. All right, so let's take a look at this slide. So before you explain the slide and what it was like on that day to actually ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange and go through that emotion, why don't you walk people through your Endeavor history, the story for those who don't know it first?
Well, my Endeavor history was that we were about to raise money, and one of the guys that was preparing us a business plan, we did not have any single business plan, and it was 2 years into the making of Globant. Our business plan was, one line was, we will not sell anything in Argentina. Everything we will sell will be in the US and the UK. That was it. So this guy introduced us to Endeavor. We didn't know what it was. We went to a selection process that was extremely enriching. It was so good that we had to go twice. But I believe that, as entrepreneurs, we don't like to lose any times. So
you talked about crying, actually, after the first panel.
Oh, yeah, it was a major fuck up, and I spoke about that yesterday. So I cried for 2 minutes, then I started laughing, and then I said, okay, what the heck? We are going to go and do it again. I've been speaking a lot. Now I'm the chairman of Endeavor. So it was like a full round. And this brings me to talk to many different entrepreneurs, mentoring them over, what you're going to expect from the process. And I remember talking to Gaston Parisier, who is here, and said, he had to go twice through the process. And I said, Gaston, it is the macho thing to go twice.
Real men and women go through 2 ISPs.
It's a way to, to help
Badge
them
of honor.
mitigate that. Yeah. But,
so talk about this moment. Come on, this is so few people in the world ever have this chance. Talk us through that emotion. What was it like that day?
It was fantastic. It gives me goosebumps. When it was around 7:30, when we jumped into a van and we were heading south, New York City, when I got to Wall Street and I raised, when you walk out of the van, you are like looking at the floor, and when you look at the name of your company in front of the stock exchange, is the first thing that I thought is, wow, how amazing stuff we can do as a team. And my first tweet was about my team. It was not ours. I believe that entrepreneurs, we are highly overvalued. It is our teams who makes the difference. And that was fantastic. I remember not only I broke that
gavel.
Yes, the hammer. Which a few weeks later, some other guy that was doing it fall again from the, and it was on the news. But we were extremely happy. At the same time, I remember that afternoon, I went to Central Park with my little daughter, and we went in one of these bikes that she was running on the back. And we're talking about, okay, what do you know what it is to be an entrepreneur? And she was answering everything, I don't speak a lot about my business at home, but she knew everything. She knew about stocks. She knew about going public, what it meant. And then we play cards on one tree that is our tree now. We go there every time we go to New York.
I love that, your tree.
So it was like two 2 days, was two very strong emotions in the same day. I believe that is extremely important in life to achieve great stuff, but at the same time to have your feet on the ground.
Yes.
So I love that.
Achieve great stuff, but have your feet on the ground. So that brings us to this. Your feet are never on the ground, Guibert.
Wow.
This is highly ironic. In fact, Guibert, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Globant, wanted to officially change his title to Chief Party Officer. But you've managed to create a culture of fun. You have now 5,000 employees?
6,000.
Yeah, I knew. It's already 6,000 across 35 countries at Globant.
35 offices.
35 offices at Globant. And you've done two things. That you've maintained this entrepreneurial culture. I would love you to talk a little bit about that. And also, you have done all these job training and employee, we talk about the quality of jobs. And I'd love you just to touch briefly on those two things.
Well, yeah, we've been always trying to break the mold on how we did things. One thing that I would like to mention about that, the one on the green, that was when La Nación newspaper did an interview from us. And they asked me, okay, send me a picture of the four of you. So, trying to grab on anything I could do, I asked the design team to create that picture that if you see, it has a lot of taglines. So it was actually, I did send this picture, and they said, no, do you have another one? No, I don't have another one. You need to put this one. So I used them as an advertising. The jump became a trademark, but we always promoted a culture of fun and entrepreneurship. So, one thing yesterday I spoke about that. There are two things that I knew when running a company that grows. The first one is I won't be able to know everyone by his name. Then I won't be able to be everywhere my people are going to be. So we developed technology to actually convert every employee into a guardian of the corporate culture. So through this technology we launched as a product which is called Start Me Up and keeps me busy a lot of the time today.
If you want a Start Me Up demo, this is now also a commercial plug.
Yes.
See, convert after.
You send me an email at g@globant.com. But essentially we started to see connections, understand who were at the core of our organization, despite the fact that they were not recognized by this org chart. And we started to manage our culture through data, and understanding who people are. And this allows us to grow the scale and to make sure that everywhere I go, I may go to India, for example, where we have offices, and when I arrive there, it's already a Globant office as if I were there. So I believe that the first job an entrepreneur has is to replicate itself. Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to convey our dreams. We need to make our dreams become our people's dream. And as much as we can, lead by example and try to foster that and make them realize how important it is, what we can do with our companies is very important.
Very well said. After how many whiskeys?
Oh, plenty.
So this is just a small snapshot of Guibert's bubble. But as he's mentioned, apart from investing and mentoring many companies, you are the chairman of Endeavor Argentina. And we mentioned last night that the vice chairman of Endeavor Argentina, Marcos Galperin, do you want to just report the news of this week?
Marcos' company became the most valuable company in the whole country. So for us, we're very proud of that, very happy. But
$10 billion, a decacorn.
Yes. But
Endeavor Entrepreneur.
It's fantastic, and now we have become, the first, I believe, Endeavor affiliate that actually is run by entrepreneurs, and I believe that's extremely important.
Yay.
So I will encourage you to, in your countries, to try to involve yourself at the board level. It's fantastic what we are living. Argentina has been born, was, together with Chile, they were the first countries where Endeavor was. And we are seeing things that still you haven't seen in many countries, but are extremely important. One of those is that Endeavor entrepreneurs are becoming extremely relevant for our countries. So, we have seen the president closing, a big event he did to reinsert Argentina into the world, and he closed it with 4 unicorns from Argentina. We have seen the largest newspaper in Argentina having like 5 covers of the magazine, of the Sunday magazine, with 5 Endeavor entrepreneurs during the last year and a half. So we are becoming relevant. We are becoming something that people want to speak about. So it's like somehow entrepreneurship, which is we were talking on the board meeting the other day. It's an accepting. It's not a how do you call it? A sustantivo. I don't know.
A noun?
Yes, a
it's
noun.
Not a noun.
A noun. It's not.
It's an adjective, not a noun or
it's
verb.
It's an adjective, but somehow it has become a noun. And a noun that people is using to companies who have been grown with a sense of the impact we have in an environment of full transparency, telling our stories, trying to inspire others. So nobody would dare to say that Marcos Galperin is not an entrepreneur. So
awesome. In the place where there was no word for entrepreneur.
Yes.
It was not a sustantivo, no hiciste, 20 years ago. Okay, so now we're going to move on. I should say that Guibert at one point was voted person in Endeavor with the best hair, but I think you've got some competition here. All right, Romero, you knew this was coming. For those of you who don't know, for years, I went to managing director after managing director in Brazil. Ju was not there, Ju is not to blame, saying, you're welcome. Where is BuscaPé? Where is BuscaPé? We have a panel coming up. Where is BuscaPé? Can I talk to Romero? Where is BuscaPé? And then I sent this article. I said, it's too late. If you miss the next BuscaPé, you're bleeping dead to me. But Romero, it has a happy ending. I'd love you to tell your side of the story and the journey.
Sure. So I think in my case, it was the other way around. So I think the last honor I got from Endeavor was to become an Endeavor entrepreneur. So I did the path the other way. So basically, my first contact with Endeavor was in 2001 or 2002. And we really loved Endeavor, but because of a silly rule, which was related to our financial investors also having to give back, we couldn't move on with the process. And I'm super happy that we changed that.
Yeah, now it's just the entrepreneurs, exactly, not the investors.
And we became close to Endeavor. I became doing mentorship when possible to some entrepreneurs. And then later I joined the board, the local board. I've been in the Brazilian board for 4 or 5 years now. And it's been a huge fun. And this morning I was walking around the hotel and this beautiful landscape. And I was realizing that although I was talking to a lot of entrepreneurs my whole life and doing a lot of acquisitions at BuscaPé, we did like 20 acquisitions. It was through Endeavor that I got the spark of doing angel investment, because I started to do a lot of mentorship and knowing smarter than me, younger than me, with better hair than me, talented guys. And I started to do naturally, and which became my job today as a venture capitalist. So it's funny to look back and see how things connect.
We're going to get to your new job in a minute, but talk to people about that decision to sell the company. It's your baby, to sell the company. You were with Naspers for a while, and then you left. And talk them through that journey.
It was a hard decision. It was a very hard decision, but we knew the original path that we were trailing was to go to an IPO, probably in a 2 years' time, when Naspers approached us. But we knew that the company wasn't big enough for an IPO, especially because we were competing directly with Google from one side, eBay and PayPal from the other side. And it's a tough spot to be. And definitely we realized that we need to have a strong partner to move the dream ahead and the company ahead. I think what the bond among all the founders of BuscaPé wasn't to do an IPO or to get rich or anything like that, was really to create something that would go beyond ourselves. And it got to a point that BuscaPé needed a stronger partner. And it was a hard call. It was a hard call. But ended up being a very good one. So Naspers was a tremendous partner and a tremendous investor to BuscaPé. For many years, they pretty much continue our strategy of growing and expanding. But again, like I'm an entrepreneur, I was born an entrepreneur in that sense. And I was feeling more and more like an executive, flying here and there and doing reports. And it's funny because I thought BuscaPé would be the largest thing I would build in my life. And it wasn't. So the team we put together, back to what you said, and the dream we had became bigger than BuscaPé at some point. And I thought it was time to leave and maybe try to create a larger impact by supporting other entrepreneurs.
So Romero was at one of our Endeavor ISPs when we showcased the bubble maps for Argentina and Turkey. And that's when he said, I want a bubble, it better be big, and I want it to be Endeavor teal, and I've got to become an Endeavor entrepreneur. So he became the first, he went through a panel, he became the first honorary Endeavor entrepreneur in our history. And Romero, we actually are going to do the full data analysis this summer, but here is the beginning of your bubble. It's just the beginning.
Thank you.
There are many more companies. Okay, so now you're at Redpoint with Jeff Brody, who's a good friend of Endeavor and investor in Catalyst too, but you're on the other side. What do you wish you knew as an entrepreneur raising money from VCs now that you're on the other side?
Oh, many things, but I can highlight a few. So first of all, it's a people business. People ask me if I moved from technology to finance. It's a people business. It's even more intense on people than was starting a company. So what I'm trying to say is worry more about getting a good connection to the potential investor, try to read him, understand what he wants with the company, have an open agenda. At BuscaPé, we had different phases with different shareholders. And it really worked because we were lucky, but we were also able to read the investors and understand their needs. We knew that Merrill Lynch and Itaú Unibanco would have to sell their stake in 6-7 years' time. We knew what Great Hill Partners wanted for us. We knew and we discussed it what Naspers wanted from us. So create a relationship with your investor. Worry less about valuation, especially in the early days. A good friend of mine said once, I asked him, I was doing a lecture, 5 minutes, and I was supposed to say what was my biggest mistake. And I called him, he was a mentor in the early days, and I asked him and said, you're gonna get angry at me. I said, why? No, please, be honest. I said, you should have negotiated better valuations on the first rounds, because you would probably have 30% more shares now, and 30% more shares on a $374 million is a lot of money. So that's your mistake. And I slept that night, and the other day in the lecture, I said exactly the other. I said, get diluted, because the first valuation of BuscaPé was below $1 million. But without that first check, nothing would have happened. So do the first step. There is no elevator. There is no escalator. It is stairs, one step at a time.
Awesome. Okay, moving on. That's awesome. Yes, yes. Okay, speaking of chasing people, Nix, when we went into the Philippines, we knew we couldn't miss you, and so we captured the flag here. And I think you became only the second company in the history of Endeavor before we launched in Japan to IPO before you went through the Endeavor process. But you started, you were the youngest stockbroker in the Philippines. You worked at KFC. Why don't you tell us about your entrepreneurial journey and how you started at such a young age?
You know, I'm probably the most unusual tech entrepreneur. I graduated the year after the Asian financial crisis, couldn't get a job. So I ended up working at a KFC restaurant in a mall. And I remember my very first job there was to clean the toilet. And what's unusual about that is when I searched around the restaurant, there was no toilet for that particular KFC branch. My manager asked me to clean the toilet of the mall. Because I came from a good school, and in her mind, oh, this guy won't last. Might as well throw him the crappiest thing he could possibly do on day one. And if he does it, then why not? Yeah, you know, I did it, and coming from a good university, you're thinking, wow, this isn't exactly what, what I had imagined professional life to be. But then, so that was 1998, and the internet started to really come to the Philippines. And I started my first website, which was an online message board with $200. I licensed a software called Ultimate Bulletin Board. I don't know how to program, so I figured it out, created the first homepage using Microsoft PowerPoint. I remember when I asked a web developer to turn it into a website, because when you shift from what you did in PowerPoint, it becomes HTML. Everything blows up, right? But, you know, I was able to find a way to market it by being very crafty. And within 1 month's time, it became the largest website in the Philippines without spending on marketing. But the cost of hosting became so high, I was quickly forced to sell it to a large conglomerate in the Philippines called the Ayala Group. But you know, when I got to Ayala, because I was part of the deal, right? I had to continue running it, and they now own majority of the company. When I got to Ayala, there was an interesting statistic that caught my attention, which was that there were 6 million cell phones in the Philippines and 2 million PCs. This was back in year 2000. And I said, you know, at the end of the day, the growth of the internet is anchored on two things: the dropping of the cost of access and the dropping of the device to access the internet. Coming from a poor country where most people cannot afford laptops and desktops, I concluded the future of the internet must be mobile, because people cannot sell toothpaste to people who don't have toothbrushes. And so I started Xurpas in 2001 with $1,350 of paid-up capital, so very little money. There were 3 of us who were founders. I didn't know how to program, so I brought in 2 engineers. And at the time, we had 200 competitors, all with more money than us. The number one competitor had $30 million, well, $27 million in total funds raised. We never raised venture capital. From day one until the day before we listed, no rounds of venture capital. And so we're like, oh man, how am I going to compete, right? So, but basically I analyzed where venture capital went. And typically, if your business is transaction-based, it went to customer acquisition. I said, well, I can be competitive if I can acquire customers without having to spend, just the way I did it with Pinoy Exchange. I was able to, and I kept my costs low. So if you had much lower costs and you had a way to acquire customers without having to spend copious amounts of capital, you could be competitive. And we just out-survived all of those competitors. In 2013, a friend who had 2 listed companies in the Philippine Stock Exchange posted the question, Nix, have you ever thought of listing? At the time, I was just focused on the customer, and I was just focused on growing really a sustainable long-term business. Listing wasn't really in my sort of vision, or it wasn't something I was thinking about. And so he started introducing me to investment bankers. And every investment banker, potential underwriter said, you're not listable. There's no tech company listed. Actually, in most Southeast Asian stock exchanges, especially in the Philippines, no one will understand you. But with each rejection, I became curious, right? I was going, oh, you must have said this advice to every other tech entrepreneur before me. What's behind that curtain? And so I understood eventually how investment banking works. Like, having never raised money, I had no clue what was buy side, what was sell side, no clue. I started looking into it and I said, hey, if I can be the only one that's listed in my market, then if you're a fund manager, you're going to want to create diversity in your portfolio, right? You're going to have some money in retail, some money in mining, some money in banking. Maybe there's an amount of money you can deploy for a technology company because the probability of us growing 10x over the next 5 years is greater than any other established industry, and it worked. And then in 2015, Manny Ayala, who heads the Philippine office, was telling me about Endeavor, and I had not heard of Endeavor before. And so I was like, but you know, Manny, I'm already connected. So admittedly, I was a bit proud at that point. I said, Nix, trust me. I've seen this network. I've seen how it helps other entrepreneurs. You've known me for a while. You have to go through this process. I went through the process, and in the ISP, one of the panelists told me, which threw me off guard. He goes, Nix, you look like Yahoo in a world that's increasingly becoming Google and Facebook. I'm worried about you. So,
Yeah.
thinking you're such hot
Superstar,
stuff coming
no
from the
more.
Philippines, it's very
Tough
different,
love.
right? A very seasoned
Yeah.
VC told me that. And so, at that point, what do you say, right? So I just go, well, that's actually why I'm here going through this application process.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because the peer network. And one of the things, look, with all of you all are household names now. You've gotten some celebrity in your countries. And Nix, you probably most among all. I mean, you go to the Philippines and people know who you are. How have you kept grounded? And what's the importance of having a peer network to kind of keep you honest?
I think it's important for every entrepreneur to have a mindset that there's still so much more for us to learn. So whenever I'm asked, Nix, who's your mentor? I say, well, I look at every encounter with every person, whether it's an Uber driver, a teacher, someone who cleans the hallways, or a CEO of a company, as someone who I can really learn lessons from. Because that person will have a set of experiences different from mine. And so I get surprised, when you're very curious and you ask the right questions and you're very genuine about really learning from that person, there's so much you can learn. And ultimately, I believe that if you're going to build a company that's anchored on innovation, ultimately, innovation is really all about having a continuous stream of ideas and having the culture to be able to implement it. And ideas, really, the building blocks of ideas are things previously known combined to form something new. And if you're always able to have a very large portfolio of sets of knowledge coming from different experiences and encounters from people, then you'll have many building blocks by which you can apply to your organization. So that's important, and I try to teach that to every earlier stage entrepreneur.
And in fact, this is the beginning. It's very, very incomplete, so we have to fill it in. This is the very beginning of your bubble. We have to get more data done in the Philippines. Yes. Okay, so I promised them, I know you all have a lot of questions. I want to ask them each one more. We can go down to the Endeavor logo. I have one more common question. Sorry for each of you. I'm going to tell one story of an entrepreneur who was supposed to be here but is not, and then I'm going to throw it open. And that question is, you each mentioned a piece of advice that a mentor gave or someone gave you. I have this deep-seated belief, and this is why we have the founder to funder encouragement and the peer network and then peer mentorship that Endeavor is all about, that getting advice from another entrepreneur, there's nothing like it. In fact, Reid Hoffman, who will be with us tomorrow, said that he first didn't like the PayPal Mafia. And I was like, own it, Reid. I own Chica Loca, own the PayPal Mafia. We're about building more of these in these markets. Deal. And he agreed, and because he talks about calling up Max Levchin and Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel and Reid disagree about almost everything, including the current president. But there's nothing like that tough love. So my question for you is what is the toughest piece of advice or toughest love that you've either given to another entrepreneur or received from another entrepreneur? Okay, so we'll go backwards. So Nix, let's start with you.
Oh, man. There's really 1,001 things that I've heard over the years, but one of them would really have to be really being able to dream super big. Even over the years, like when I was told, Nix, why don't you list your company? My response was, what do I need the money for? Because we were profitable. I mean, if you didn't raise venture capital, you must have a business model that generates healthy cash flow, right? And then he then returns the question and he goes, well, if you had billions of pesos or $1 billion pesos, what would you do? And I didn't know how to answer it, admittedly, at that point in time. And so when I went home, I started saying, maybe I'm not dreaming big enough. And so when I talk to other earlier stage entrepreneurs and I ask them, how big can this get? Or what is the impact that you want to build for this? And you'll be surprised how many early stage Filipino entrepreneurs want to build something like the Uber of Cebu. Like one city in the Philippines. Like, that's it? Just the Uber of one city? And so I try to help them stretch their minds. And I would say I'm very thankful to every person I encounter who helps really extend the dimensions of my thinking.
Just last night, we were with a fellow Endeavor entrepreneur from the Philippines who came through twice, Steve from BuscaPé. And Nick says very proudly, yeah, Steve just launched his 100th store. It's, you know, it's a local Starbucks. And I'm like, wow, that's great. And Steve's not looking happy. He said, at my ISP, they told me they wouldn't vote for me unless I launched 500 stores. Okay, Romero, you're on.
I think the best advice I got was during a phase where BuscaPé, we were extremely focused the first 7 years, and I think that was key to our success. But right after that period, we decided to grow really fast. And that's when we acquired the main competitor, and then we started doing a lot of acquisitions. And I got completely distracted with the culture and with the team. And I was a leader by passion and example, but not really by being a good coach. Because BuscaPé was so important for me, it was my little baby, that I would just run over my team sometimes to get things done, which is a huge mistake. Getting this feedback was super important to my career, as a human being, but it was hard to get. And I think, but it completely changed my life. The one I gave, which was really tough, was to an entrepreneur, and it was in a very subtle way, but I made him realize that continuing with his idea and his dream was probably not the best use of his time and his resources. Yeah. So it's very tough to do, but you have a bright mind in a project that is not at the same level. It's probably the right thing to do, as much as it's painful for everyone involved. So that was a tough one.
Good answer. Okay, Guibert, you're up.
Well, the most useful piece of advice that I got was actually on one of these retreats. It was Bill Salman. You spoke about him
Who will
yesterday.
also be here tomorrow, professor of entrepreneurship at HBS, who introduces me as the stalker.
I remember being with Bill on a beach one night after one of the parties like the one we had yesterday. And we had an offer to...
I'm trying to picture that. You and Bill on the beach, the whiskey.
There were flames, I don't know, some torches. And we had an offer to acquire Globant. Back then, it was 2007. And together with Martin, my co-founder, you know, we say that Endeavor creates those magical moments. We talk about magical moments and the importance of being on every time on the network, because those magical moments otherwise wouldn't happen. So that night, Bill helped us analyze our business. And it was, you know, for any entrepreneur, particularly, I would say, you know, I don't want to, you know, I believe it should be everywhere, but in Argentina, if at one point you get an offer on the table, entrepreneurs start to see that, okay, now I better get this and I run, you know, because the environment doesn't help you think that it wouldn't be just because of coincidence that you are there, but actually when you are building value, I'm sure that you are creating, it is for a reason. So these guys were for a reason placing some money on the table, and we were hardly analyzing that. And Bill said, guys, you know your business. You've been able to build a very good team. You have very good track record with some interesting customers. Software will never go away. So why sell? If it were not because of that, we would have sold the company for 30 times less what it's worth today.
And you'd probably be a venture capitalist.
Yes, I don't know. I'm not very good at that. But the next thing that happened was that in August, this event was in 2007.
Yeah.
No, yeah, 2007. In Miami. Those were the retreats that I...
Yeah, we're not going to speak about that. Nope, nope.
Miami is on my heart.
What happens at Endeavor stays at Endeavor. Okay, we're moving on.
So, next thing we did was a few weeks after. I remember Martin came one day with a newspaper, dropped it on a table, and said, "This is what we need to do." On the cover of that newspaper was saying Mercado Libre list on the NASDAQ.
Yes.
So
awesome.
We did have another thing, and that put us to work. It took us 7 years to get to that bell. It was a lot of hard work, but we were inspired by Marcos, and actually first thing we did is say, Marcos, want to speak to you, you know? And he was extremely grateful, open with us, and he shared all of this. You know, one thing that I learned is that and I was speaking about this last week in one Endeavor conference we did in Patagonia, is it looks like we come to these events trying to make our businesses successful. And I was listening to people telling stories, and there were a lot of different stories being told, but everyone was listening very carefully. And what I said is, for me, this night has been magic because everyone was listening carefully regardless of the industry. And I said, we are here not just for ourselves, not just for our business. We are collectively creating the future of our kids. And I have come to learn that we are much more than each of us. And that by working on a network, we could be far more powerful. Another thing that I learned is that our companies, our teams, are a massive weapon of impact.
Love that. I love that. So,
and we should use it wisely. Okay?
That was beautiful. So before we open it up to questions, you all can have a moment to think. I want to tell one more story in this regard. And it's Nevzat Aydin was supposed to be able to join us today, but he had family issues in Turkey that he needed to attend. He sends his love. And for those of you who don't know Nevzat co-founded a company called Yemek Sepeti, an online food delivery company. He sold in 2015 to Delivery Hero for $589 million. It was actually Endeavor Catalyst's second exit after Globant. This was the largest internet exit in Turkey's history. Now, Nevzat and Melih, his co-founder, went on to do something amazing, which is they took $27 million of their own earnings and distributed it among employees who had not taken stock options because they didn't understand them and thought they were going to be cheated out of them. And Nevzat and Melih had kept a ledger of every employee's role in the company and what they would have been worth, and out of their own shares gave that in distributed bonuses. CNN named Nevzat the world's best boss. Yeah. So just to tell you his impact, a few years ago, Uriyet, the New York Times of Istanbul, did a survey among college-age students asking them their entrepreneurial role models. And a few years ago, number 1 was Steve Jobs, number 2 was Mark Zuckerberg, and number 3 was Bill Gates. Well, last year they repeated the survey. Number 1 was Steve Jobs, number 2 was Mark Zuckerberg, number 3 was Nevzat Aydin. Yeah. That's my new goal, by the way. Everyone has to oust Bill Gates or Zuckerberg, you know? Note to all of you. But in any event, Nevzat then, he's joined our board in Turkey. He gives back. He invests in other companies. He's an investor in Catalyst, as are all three of you, paying it forward. But my favorite story on this tough love through entrepreneurs is there's another Endeavor entrepreneur named Hakan Bas, who was at Peak Games and at Lydiana. And Nevzat called him up one day. And he said, Hakan, I've been reading all these stories about you in the newspaper. And Hakan's like, oh, that's nice, Nevzat. And Nevzat says, no. I've been reading about you dating supermodels. I've been reading about you going to conferences. I have not been reading about your company. He said, get back to work, ditch the models, say no to the conferences, and the next headlines I read about you better be about Lydiana and your company. And hangs up the phone. So
That was a tough advice.
which part, the supermodels or the conference? Okay. So now I would love to throw it open. I don't know how we do this with, I can't really see. So are there microphones? We have about 10 minutes for questions. Yeah, we can. Yep, back.
I hope I don't have to repeat everything.
No. You just forgot, you mentioned the Board of Endeavor Italy and being a panelist mentor. You were also named Mentor of the Year one summit, as I recall.
Yeah, I shouldn't say that about myself.
Okay, you gave that to me.
So we create digital journeys. So the question is for my friend, CEO of Globant. Do you have any technologist in your company who has 2 passports, one Argentinian and one Italian, and you would give him a 1-year sabbatical to come and work, transform the Italian digital government with me?
He's CTO, the CEO's over there, so Martin, can Guibert go?
I'm sorry, Diego, I missed the last part. What did you say about the passports?
The question is, I'm looking for technologists to help me create the digital journey of the Italian government.
Do you want to move to Italy where there are lots of supermodels is the question.
Since in Argentina you have so many Argentinians with Italian passport, I'm wondering whether a couple of those would take a sabbatical 1 year, like I did, and come and help. But you don't have to give a live answer now. Don't worry. You can think about it.
But it would be lovely to
no, but
help,
joking aside, I think we do have something in common, and we would really love to learn from what you guys have done.
One thing we are doing is I have the honor to be on the advisory board for the President Macri, and I believe that as entrepreneurs we have we are the looking forward locomotives of our countries. So we have a lot of value to bring to our communities by signaling north, and so I believe that every Endeavor entrepreneur that I know is somehow related and connected to making Argentina a better place to live. So it will be, we are passionate about this, and it's very hard for us to moderate that passion.
All right, well, I want to thank all of you. This is a wonderful panel. Thank all of you for everything you do.